This building is boarded up now, but it used to be the site of a popular night spot called Club Monet on the ragged edge of downtown Providence. And early one morning in the summer of 2012, when the club was letting out, a confrontation broke out across the street. 2 shots were fired, and Terrell Barros and his friend Stephen Bowden scrambled for their car. One of them had just pulled the trigger.
That one person has been killed and another wounded in a shooting outside the Monet Lounge around 2:30 this morning.
But who'd fired the gun? Barros or Bowden? The dying victim seemed to indicate that Barros was the shooter, and a year later, the state would put him on trial for murder. But there were problems with the case. An off-duty cop working a security detail at the club that night was on the scene in seconds, and he saw Bowden, not Barros, stuff the murder weapon into a pocket on the passenger door of their car. And here's the big one. The lab found Bowden's DNA on the gun, not Barros's. The DNA testing had excluded the guy the state was prosecuting for murder. That could have been a case killer, but in the run-up to the trial here, the state landed on a clever and it appears deeply cynical way around that problem.
Just learned that a jury found Terrell Barros guilty of murdering
This is a Globe Opinion series we're calling Twisted Science. We're not looking at the usual high-profile problems with forensics, phony junk science like bite mark analysis, or big lab scandals where analysts just make up results. We're looking at a subtler, more pervasive problem where lawyers and lab analysts take perfectly legitimate science like DNA analysis and twist it. When the lab examined the murder weapon, it found a mixture of several people's DNA. Bowden's DNA was part of the mix, but Barros had been excluded. To understand how prosecutors got around this problem and even made the test results work for them, you have to understand a little bit about how DNA analysis works. When you have several people's DNA on an object, like a gun, you'll find a big jumble of genetic markers. And if you want to, you can pull a few of those markers out and make them say something they really don't say. Okay, let's make this easy. Imagine 2 friends, Dan Brown and Annie Smith. Say they drop letter-shaped pasta of their initials into a bowl of soup. If you dip into the soup with a spoon and pull out a D and an S, that doesn't mean a guy named David Stewart, who has the initials DS, dropped pasta into the soup. The letters just happen to match. Well, in the Barros case, there were a bunch of these chance matches. And that's what the prosecution leaned on. It walked through all the genetic markers, emphasizing the places where Barros matched the DNA mixture on the gun. And it left the jury with the distinct impression that Barros's DNA was on the weapon. This was a gross distortion of the test results, and the state's star witness, the DNA lab supervisor, went along with it. The science was twisted, and Terrell Barros was convicted and sentenced to 2 life sentences, plus 30 years. He sat in jail for a decade, and then, in the summer of 2023, a Rhode Island Superior Court judge vacated the decision and granted him a new trial. Barros is free now, but the state has appealed to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. They want to put him back in prison. Barros may prevail, but even if he does, he's just one person. What about all the other cases of twisted science? Not just in courtrooms, but in labs. This is a big problem. But how can we fix it? We have some ideas we'll share down the line. Follow along at globe.com/twistedscience as we explore more cases.